to our right, back right of the room, as well as some snacks and refreshments which have been moved to the tables, which is great. So tonight, we're going to start from hearing a few different voices, people that are stepping up in their own communities to push back against Bill 5 to build something better. First, we're going to hear from our opening speaker, which I'll introduce in a moment. And one of our volunteers will share a bit about her own experience, what inspired her to step up and get involved. And then finally, we'll hear from MPP Mike Schreiner, who will speak about the bigger picture and why this moment demands bold, coordinated action, and how each of us can play a powerful role in killing Bill 5. Then we'll break out into tables for a little exercise. You can probably see some materials on the table. There's a facilitator at your table that will support this exercise. Can I just get all the facilitators to raise their hands, please? Keep them raised. Thank you. Great. Okay, that's excellent. Thank you very much. Then we'll break into the tables and then we'll return to the discussion and talk about taking the action. Where we'll be facilitated by Ashley Clancy to discuss those concrete steps that I know you're all here to take. That's great. So our next speaker, Michael Chino, is proud to be First Nation with Cree ancestry from James Bay, and he moved to Toronto in 1975. He's held several leading roles in the Native community of Toronto that consisted of being Vice President of the AKEC, First Nation School of Toronto, President of the Toronto Council Fire Native Cultural Center Board of Directors. He's been a research consultant with NAN, First Nations Band Office, and sat in the Ontario Joint Aboriginal Anti-Racism Committee. He is the former president of the Indigenous representative of the Aboriginal Urban Alliance of Ontario. As a survivor of 2 residential schools, he has traveled to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission statement gatherings and hearings to share his residential school experience with non-Indigenous Canadians. Michael received the commemorative medal for the 125th anniversary of the Confederation of Canada in recognition of voluntary service in 1993. Michael has worked with Namares, providing direct relief to persons in crisis. He served as union steward and president of Local 3950 while employed at Temple Wire Products Limited. He's currently a peer advocacy worker for IRSS at Toronto Council Fire Native Cultural Center. Michael's studies at Humber College and George Brown College have assisted him on his journey of healing and through his many tasks. Please join me in warmly welcoming Michael Chino.
System. And I traveled with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for 4 years. I attended 2 residential schools in 1958 and 1968. I grew up in a Cree community on Treaty 9 territory along the shores of James Bay, formerly known as rootbrian. And I'm here today to speak to you about the problem with the system here. I don't know, but some people can't hear me. Okay. First thing I want to do is I want to talk about this 2-row logo. It's going to take about 1 minute. Company diplomacy defines how Polish systems for settler Polish settlers. The principles of peace, friendship, and respect. Establishes the basic relationship with First Nations and Canada. The Indigenous people of Turtle Island, we stewarded the lands and resources around the Great Lakes for generations. We have a treaty relationship, and that treaty relationship has to be upheld. respected and honored. There are distinct indigenous and treaty rights of indigenous peoples retained on this land. There are also survivors of genocide, intergenerational trauma, and violent settler colonialism. Anyone who opposes Bill 5 is radical, is labeled as a radical by the government of Ontario. The absence of Indigenous consent is a blatant disregard to the Section 35 rights holders of Treaty 9 affiliated bands. The Belfort government is sidestepping its treaty obligations with First Nations people. The purpose of Bill 5 is to plunder the provincial homeland of the treaty, the Noji Cree communities north of Thunder Bay and Sulaka, to access the Ring of Fire, chromite mineral deposits. It would also desecrate the wildlife habitat and the inherent rights of endangered species who live there. This Madagascar Nation encompasses James Bay Treaty territory and the Ontario portion of Treaty 5, formerly known as Rupert's Land. Treaty number 9 occupies 2/3 of Ontario, spanning an area of 210,000 square miles, and represents 51 First Nations communities, or 45,000 First Nations citizens on and off reserve. In 2008, the KI6, the chief, Don Morris, and council of Big Trout Lake, also known as KI, went to jail for 2 weeks for blocking mining projects on their ancestral homeland. Are you willing to make that sacrifice? And the chief and the council were released because of the head honcho of the Anglican Church of Canada. The Anglican Bishop wrote a letter to the government, and the KI6 and the chief and council were released. So that's all the time I have. Thank you for listening.
I'm trying not to move this stand very much. All right, so next, we're thrilled to hear from another voice, Stacey Foe, one of our dedicated volunteers here in Toronto. She'll share her personal journey, what motivated her to get involved. She's been very active in Bill 5 recently. The impact it's had on her and why she believes local organizing is key to make real change. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Stacey.
John Valley, West Wing Party since August of last year. When Sheena Sharp knocked on my door campaigning for the municipal councillor seat for 15, I had no idea, I had no idea it would lead me here to this Barnstorm against Bill 5, which passed the third reading on June 4th in the face of heavy opposition. To me, Bill 5 and its federal counterpart, T5, represents, without exaggeration, the beginning of the end of democracy. Despite the lengthy, impassioned, united filibuster and public outcry, Bill 5 now grants the government the carte blanche to repeal the Endangered Species Act and replace it with practically nothing, creating lawless zones for development that are exempt from seeking environmental assessments, and most egregiously discard the voices of Indigenous peoples who have always been at the forefront of the struggle to honor the earth and have already survived centuries of colonial violence to erase their perspectives, as well as to silence their warnings about environmental degradation to the point of no return. Climate change is no longer on the horizon. It is a very real, very listens, respects science, and values our communities. That's why I'm here, to invite you to stand together, take our power back, and show that no government gets to strip away our rights without a fight. Someone who has never stopped fighting for our environment and for real democracy is our next speaker. Mike Schreiner is the leader of the Green Party of Ontario and the NPP for Law. He's been a tireless advocate against Bill 5 and a voice for climate action that matters most. Please join me in welcoming Mike Schreiner.
Everyone for being here today. Michael, thank you for your wise words and sharing the spirit of the two real wampum belt. And I would say Doug Ford needs to take some lessons from you, my friend. You know, I look out in this crowd tonight and I'm thinking back to 2 years ago at this very moment when people thought there was no way we could stop Doug Ford from paving over the Greenbelt. And people power, the kind of people power we see in the room tonight, stopped Doug Ford and forced him to keep his promise not to destroy Ontario's Greenbelt. And it's people power, the kind of people power in this room tonight that's going to force Doug Ford to kill Bill 5. You know, Bill 5 is the most extraordinary and egregious and unprecedented power grab in Ontario's history. It is a direct attack on Indigenous rights, environmental protections, labor laws, and just basic democratic oversight. Imagine a government that can literally give itself the power to say to a company, come to Ontario, go in this little region in northern Ontario, we'll bypass our constitutional duty to consult with First Nations. We'll cut corners on health and safety laws. We'll let you ignore environmental protections. We've already repealed the Endangered Species Act, so you don't even have to worry about that one. And we're going to allow you to set up shop in a lawless zone. And then we don't care what the legislature or the people of Ontario have to say, because we've removed all democratic oversight from the province of Ontario. That's exactly what special economic zones do, and it's exactly why it is so vital for us to organize tonight and moving forward to restore democracy in this province, restore respect to First Nations in this province, restore environmental protections, restore labor laws that so many people have fought for, and that's exactly why we need to kill Bill 5. So what I find so inspiring is that when this bill is passed, First Nations were on the lawn of Queen's Park saying, "You will not take our rights away." Matter of fact, there's a camp right now on the north side of Queen's Park that's Indigenous-led. The people in Dresden, where the province is removing the environmental assessment for the Dresden dump, have said, "Not in our backyard." As a matter of fact, they put so much pressure on their Conservative MPP that he actually came out against the bill. Already in Northern Ontario, First Nations are Georgetown, Toronto. I can't tell you how many rallies I've been invited to speak because people are outraged. And so the thing that we have to ask ourselves tonight, what are we going to do with that anger? What are we going to do with that outrage? What are we going to do to build the people-powered movement to kill Bill 5? And that's the question we're answering tonight. And I can tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to every rally, every backyard barbecue, every event in places like Caledon, Perry Sound, Muskoka, in Dresden, in Hamilton, in Guelph, in Northern Ontario, in Ottawa. I don't care. I'll go anywhere that people want to come together and fight to kill Bill 5. Because that's the kind of So this morning I was at Queen's Park launching our Kill Bill 5 tour, which really starts tonight. But what I said there, and what I'll say again tonight, is when we were debating Bill 5, I said that special economic zones are inspired by authoritarian dictatorships like China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia. And members of the Conservative Party during debate in the House said I was being hyperbolic. Well, I don't know if anybody heard the Premier yesterday, but he actually is embracing his vision of Ontario to be that of Saudi Arabia. He literally said that at a news conference yesterday. And I'm sorry, that is not my vision for Ontario. My vision for Ontario is inclusive prosperity in partnership with First Nations, with a thriving democracy, with an economy that invests in renewable energy and helps people save money while addressing the climate crisis. My vision of Ontario is we respect the rule of law and basic democratic processes and our constitutional duty to free, informed, prior consent. And so what I want to ask each and every one of you tonight is to ask yourself, what are you going to do to stand up for Ontario? What are you going to do to stand up for your vision of the kind of province we want to live in? Because I think you're here because you don't believe in what Doug Ford is doing to this province, and that you're going to take the actions necessary to build the people-powered movement we need to kill Bill 5. I want you to think about where you were in the fall of 2023 when the Premier finally announced he was going to backtrack on opening the Greenbelt for development. And so I wanted you to think about the fall of 2025 and think about what actions you're going to take this summer. What you're going to do to connect with people in your community and help us build a movement. Because I can guarantee you, the movement to kill Bill 5 is going to have to be bigger than the movement to halt the Greenbelt. And so tonight, I'm looking forward to being a part of a conversation about how we together are going to build this movement across the province. Who's going to step up and do what so we can protect the people and places we live in Ontario by killing Bill